It's the 757 at 6, talking local high school and college sports on your number one local sports station, ESPN Radio 94.1.
And welcome back to the 757 at 6 here on this Wednesday, the 15th day of July, the year 2020. Hope you're staying safe and well out there. Matt Hatfield here with you, and we're joined now by a special guest. He's a longtime, really respected reporter for the News Leader out in Stanton, Virginia. Follow him on Twitter at Patrick_Height and check out the website newsleader.com. He does a terrific job covering all things sports and prep sports for them. We bring in Patrick Height here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Patrick, good to have you on the show. I see on your Twitter profile you've got a Washington Nationals mask, so nice to see you practice the safe measures during our nation's health crisis.
I try to be healthy and support the World Series champs as well. Thanks for having me on, Matt. By the way, you said a long time, which makes me sound old. I am old. I'm not denying that, but I just don't like to sound old. So.
All right. Well, we'll leave that part out in future visits here on the program. And listen, the audience loves, a lot of the audience loves the Nats because we got some Virginia flavor all across that roster, including a guy we've had on that got the final out of the Fall Classic, and Daniel Hudson, who played at Princess Anne High School in Old Dominion. How else have you navigated the sports-deprived past few months here? Because every night I go home and I'm like, what am I going to do? Watch, write, talk about?
It has been very difficult for all sports fans. I just find shows on Netflix to binge and try to catch up on all the old TV shows that I never got around to because I was always busy either watching sports or out covering sports or writing about sports. So I never got a chance to watch all those shows that people talked about. Now I've had a chance over the last 4 or 5 months to catch up on some of those.
All right. Well, good deal. Before we get to the sports topics and the big news with the VHSL today, give me the go-to show on Netflix. What is it? What's the go-to program, movie, whatever it is?
Right now I am watching. I told you I'm behind on everything. I'm watching BoJack Horseman right now, which is an animated show. Which I think it ran 6 seasons. I think it actually ended this past December, but I'm up to season 5 now, so I'm watching that. I love it. It's as my wife tells me. Any kind of strange TV show I tend to enjoy. She doesn't necessarily agree with that, so I get my laptop out and watch it by myself. But I love that show.
Listen, I'm on Hulu, the old comedies from the 70s and 80s. I can pretty much spend an entire weekend with some of those. So we all have our flavors and our likes and our favorites. Let's get to today, the Virginia High School League's Executive Committee delaying the decision on the fate here of high school sports. It's going to be on July the 27th in 12 days, 9 a.m. with their meeting. I believe you were part of the Zoom today with everybody on that, which to my knowledge, that virtual call here, what do you make of everything going in, and then what came out of it to you? What do you take out of it?
Well, going in, from every athletic director and coach in this area that I have talked to since this meeting was called, I think most of us expected a decision to be made today. So going in, that's what I was thinking would happen. So I was kind of surprised that they delayed that decision. Now we don't have to wait, just under 2 weeks. So that's good, but I was a little surprised that they did not make a decision today. As one of our readers sent me a message, couldn't they have sent these models that they had from the committee? Couldn't they have sent those out, a week ago or a few days ago, and let them review them at that point and then vote on it today?
Right.
Because everybody wants a decision. I can understand coaches, athletic directors, fans especially, but these coaches and athletic directors have to get ready for their season, and they want to know what's going to happen. So I was surprised they did not make a decision. The fact they didn't, well, we'll just wait until July 27th and see what happens. The 3 models, I don't think that was a big surprise. I think from the talk I'd heard, most people kind of expected one of those models would be the one they would go to. So we'll see what they vote on. Just the sense that I got, it was a Zoom call, so you only hear the people that are discussing it. But from the people that discussed it, the I would say Model 3, which is the let's start winter sports in December, then we'll move the fall sports to a February start, and we'll have spring sports in April. So I think that's the one. We've heard that model before. That seemed like the model that was kind of gaining steam throughout the discussion this morning. I would be surprised now if that's not the one that they vote for come July 27th.
Well, that's where I was going with you next. Was Model 3 seems to be the one liked the most, as opposed to Model 2, which is switch the fall and spring seasons, and Model 1 leave all sports in season, and you would have your high-risk sports not able to play, such as football, volleyball, field hockey, cheer, those things. And I was texting with an administrator yesterday about the odds of spring football, and he told me 25%. And then after today's, he said, considering the options put out, I'd say it's 75 to 80% now. And I'm like, wow, big increase. Your thoughts on that comment there, and do you kind of feel the same way on it, that it's pretty much, you'd be shocked if that's not the option we go with here?
I would be shocked because at this point, football's not going to be played in the fall.
Right.
Any of those three models does not include football, simply because if you go with Model 1 and leave everything kind of the end of seasons that we've become accustomed to, that means the high-risk sports like football would not be played. And Billy Hahn was very clear today that they would not consider moving that to another season. They would simply just cancel sports like football, volleyball. I think cheer is in that high-risk category as well. Those sports would be canceled, and so all you would see is cross-country and golf this fall. So I don't see that model being having any chance to go through, because I think there's just too much concern over, well, let's face it, losing football. Nobody wants to lose football, and if you go with Model 1, you pretty much guarantee that there's no football season. The other two are interesting. They both of them, though, would put football in the spring, and so right now we say 75-80. I'm almost at 95% chance that we're going to see football in the spring, understanding that if we're still in phase 3 come then, if we're still, we don't have a vaccine, if things haven't improved, we may not see football then, because again, it would still fall in the high risk category and they would not play it even in the spring. So that's the one thing we have to hope, that things at least improve a little bit by the time we reach spring, so we can see some football.
Talking with Patrick Height of the News Leader out in Stanton. Follow him on Twitter at Patrick_Height, and check out the website newsleader.com for all the content he and his team do. It's the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Patrick, also the author of the great book, The Stanton Streak, of the legendary Lee basketball program under Paul Hatcher and that dynasty. Give that a follow, too, on Twitter at 85Stanton. Patrick, looking at, I've heard from a lot of people that the realignment, which I know there's talk of now going to 4 to 5 divisions here, most likely 4 when they have their next official meeting, when that gets talked about, that from the very get-go was pushed on, much like we've talked about with college sports, all the changes with conferences, because of football. Football is king. It's financially the thing that drives everything. Did you detect, or do you detect, even from other coaches and athletes outside of other sports, that the VHSL, and maybe this isn't the right word, either word, catering, or there's bitterness from some of those sports about basically bending over to appease football, making sure it happens, even if it is a negative to other sports that take place?
Sure. I mean, there is obviously some bitterness among coaches. Most of them would never go on the record and say that, but you talk to them off the record, you talk privately, there's some bitterness, because they all realize that high school football drives all sports within Virginia and every state across the country. Football is the sport that drives it. But at the same point, even if they're bitter, they have to understand that's the revenue sport. That's the sport that brings in enough money that allows some other sports to happen. So you can be bitter, but you have to understand kind of where we are in this country. Football is king. And as football goes, kind of the rest of the sports world goes. And here in our little area, we have one of the most dominant football teams in the state, understanding that it's Class 1, so it is the low class, but Riverheads here has won 4 straight state championships. They've played for 5 straight state championships. You ask anybody at Riverheads, they know that football drives everything at that school and that school's athletic department, but they're not going to say anything bad about it because it generates a lot of interest for the rest of their programs, and it gives a model of success for the rest of their programs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're right there tied in history with the likes of Hampton and Phoebus from our area here in Tidewater and Highland Springs with that record of consecutive state titles. And as you've seen it up close and personal, Patrick, I mean, those small schools and those close-knit communities at the Class 1, Class 2 levels, I mean, they breathe it, live, and every day, even on message boards, I mean, that's everything, their waking hours. It's all about, those teams, and particularly in a sport such as football.
Yeah, you want to know who's worried about not having football the most. I mean, I understand that across the board in Virginia, people are concerned about that. But you talk to those small schools like that, Class 1, Riverhead's hoping to win a 5th straight state championship. And the fact that football might be taken away from them this year, there's some hand-wringing going on in Greenville, Virginia, trust me, because they are quite concerned about that. But let's face it. Even if we have this, Model 3, we may not have a state championship like we're used to, right? I mean, they discussed that today on the Zoom call that because of travel issues, because of time, we may just have regional or sectional championships, or they may go to some bowl model. So who knows? Even if we get football this year, we may not have a state championship that we're used to.
Well, that was my next point with you was, if they go to say, and the time frame is going to only allow for basically a 5 to 6 week season, and at the most, I would think 3 rounds of playoffs as opposed to what we have now, which is up to 5 rounds, as I think it was suggested online today, like you said, 6 games and say a bowl game. Any intel on how the postseason would be structured for a sport like football, and what's your feeling on what they should do if you were in charge of making that call?
Well, and I'm really glad I'm not in charge of that because
right, me too.
It's a lose-lose situation.
It is.
Whatever decision they make, people will complain, and they just have a thankless job. I don't know. I think the structure that they talked about today was kind of the bowl scenario where you match up teams in your area, in your region at least. You match up the top-rated team with the second team, and they play, and then third and fourth place. So everybody kind of gets a bowl game at the end of the year. There was also the talk of, hey, let's go to a regional or a sectional championship, which hasn't been done in Virginia since the 40s, but maybe that's something that happens too. I don't know. I really think, my personal opinion, I think that's kind of what you might see, just call it a regional championship. And go for that and finish there. You win a regional championship. You don't go and play the state because let's face it. If we're not improved much come the end of the season, can you really see them opening up the stadium there in Salem?
No.
For us, Class 1 and Class 2, which is the schools that I cover, I can't see them opening up Salem Stadium and having a state championship football game and bringing in people from all over. That just seems crazy where we are right now. So I don't think there's any way you're going to see a state championship that we're used to come whenever the season ends.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. This year's basketball state tournament was the strangest thing ever. Being on the air with the NFHS Network and literally getting told during commercial break the news of tonight's games and the whole tournament's canceled. It was so odd every time we went to commercial break with it. And someone posted today, I don't understand how all of these softball and baseball tournaments and AAU basketball events are going on, but there can't be high school football. I mean, look, those aren't governed by the VHSL. And like you said, it is a thankless position and job that they have. There's a lot of liability with that. It's a little bit different than just a community event or something that's being put on, unlike a league here, which is the entire state being represented.
No, you're right. You can, if you're going to host an AAU tournament or something, you may get people to sign a waiver or something like that. But for the most part, you don't face the liability that a high school league would face by saying all of these high schools are going to play, because then you also put high schools in a position of, if they feel unsafe, backing out of whatever the VHSL's plan is, and then those schools face the wrath of fans. So it's just really whatever plan they come up with. I'm sure there will be those who are happy with it and those who are upset with it. But at this point, I think the VHSL needs to make a decision July 27th, and then stick with that. Whatever plan they make, go forward and hope for the best. And, if things improve somewhat, maybe you can make a few changes to that. But at this point, it's looking like Billy Hahn, even on the call this morning, said the experts he's talked to said we're not getting out of phase 3 until maybe next summer. So really not much is going to change.
That is wild to think. And Patrick, I'll get you out in this one. I thank you for the time. Look forward to getting you back here on the program. If there's no school in person and it's looking more and more like there's going to be virtual experiences, how much do these plans get altered city to city, county to county, across the board, statewide? And could whatever decision they make come July 27th be affected by that if something is to come after that?
Sure. I think it's likely that sometime, especially in the fall, which is why I think moving the start of any sports season to December makes sense, because I think some point in the fall, we're going to slip back into phase 2. You just look at what's happening around the rest of the country. I think at some point we'll slip back into phase 2 in this state. They'll have to go to virtual learning 100% in schools. And you would see a season, much like last spring, sports season get canceled. Nobody wants to see that happen again. So let's push this out to December, see if we can get things back in order by then. If schools have to return to 100% remote learning, that's going to cause a problem with any sports going on, because how can you justify, as much as I love sports, how can you justify sending kids out to play a game, to hit each other, to have fans in the stands? How can you send kids out to do that, but say, hey, it's not safe for you to go and sit in a classroom and get your education? So, if we go to remote learning, exclusively remote learning like we did last spring, that's going to have a huge impact on sports. And whatever decision they make on July 27th would have to be affected by that.
He's Patrick Height with the News Leader out in Stanton. Give them a follow on Twitter at Patrick_Height. Check out the website, newsleader.com. Always good to talk with you. You stay safe and healthy, and we'll chat again down the road, all right?
Hey, great. Thanks, Matt, and have a good evening.